Hello and welcome to TelecomTV. We are on the road, on location. We're in Düsseldorf in Germany at the SDN and OpenFlow World Summit 2014. And I'm talking with Vinay Saxena, who is Distinguished Technologist and Chief Architect, NFV Business Unit at HP. Vinay, great to see you again. We're not going to talk so much about HP and what HP is doing in NFV at the moment. We're going to talk more about CEF. And for those people out there who don't know what that is, it's CloudEthernet Forum. So let's begin with a definition. What is it? What's its charter? And who are involved?
Right. So CEF is a member body that was created by the carriers, the carrier Ethernet providers, the TEMs who provide equipment to them, around fostering and building up an environment in which the carriers, the communication service providers, the carrier Ethernet providers can provide services to enable enterprises connect to the cloud service providers in a way that they can take advantage of Ethernet technologies to provide faster, nimble, performant services to allow carriers to operate a large network and allow enterprises to connect them to hybrid cloud environments, taking advantage of the same performance, same resiliency, same availability that they have used on the traditional broadband carrier Ethernet side. So it's basically taking the capabilities that they use on the standard broadband Ethernet connectivity and taking it to the next level in connecting the cloud services and giving them the agility and the capabilities they need in order to run hybrid cloud services with public cloud services across services that will run in multiple data centers for the enterprises. So it's basically a forum to foster a set of services that will allow enterprises to bring together the carrier Ethernet services, the cloud services together. So that's essentially the charter. Now, I mean, if you look at the genesis of Cloud Ethernet Forum, it was born out of the Metro Ethernet and the Carrier Ethernet Forum. So the intent of this forum is not to create a new set of standards, but it's basically to bind NFV and SDN on one side, cloud on other, and using Carrier Ethernet as a set of technologies to deliver hybrid cloud services that can be leveraged by enterprises.
Okay, thank you. So that's the genesis. There must have been a need for this to happen, for the genesis to have taken place in the beginning. Where did that need come from? Who appreciated it first? Or was it the vendors, the carriers, or what? Or was it just mutual need?
So I think all of the above. I mean, as we look at adoption of virtual private cloud for enterprises, what enterprises were seeing is the standard connectivity they use to connect to those virtual private clouds in public cloud environments like Amazon's or Azure's and Google's and HP was they were seeing capabilities that were lacking in those services, the availability models, the resiliency models that this classical carrier Ethernet has provided for years. In a VPN over-the-top like model, those services were not present. So how do we bring those capabilities to the enterprise so they can run mission-critical workload with a certain level of guarantees behind the scenes and quality of service? So it was basically both the cloud service providers coming to the carrier Ethernet providers and saying, hey, can you offer a service that will allow us to connect? Enterprises were going to the same carrier Ethernet providers and CSPs and saying, hey, you already provide us broadband and you provide us carrier Ethernet, why don't you create something that allows us to take advantage of both? So it was both, and then from a vendor perspective, we saw a chance by this as a vehicle to bring in SDN and NFV technologies to bring on the edge of the network for providing great services on the periphery. Firewall, WAN acceleration on top of the carrier Ethernet services. So I think this is a great way to bring multiple different standards organizations, multiple different forums in providing essentially a solution that everybody needs.
What position do you hold within the CEF?
So I'm a board member within CEF, and what we want to do is to bring together this change by which the capabilities of carrier Ethernet cloud services are delivered in a way that allows the enterprise users who are trying to consume these services over public cloud, hybrid cloud, take advantage of these services, which then provides to them an ability to run their workloads much more efficiently much more seamlessly across private data centers, across public data centers. So the idea, as I said before, is to take advantage of already well-defined capabilities, but bring it towards the cloud. So from our point of view, when I joined the board, our interest was how do we bring NFV and SDN into this thing? So our interest in this was bringing together SDN and NFV around the edges of the carrier Ethernet services on the customer edge side, on the provider edge side, and see what can we do to enhance those capabilities to the next level.
Because, Vinay, what we've seen a lot of recently is massive emphasis on NFV and less emphasis on SDN. It's not exactly the poorer sister, but it's been interesting here at the forum that people are beginning to talk about SDN in the carrier space. I mean, it's very evident what the appeal is for the carriers with NFV. It's rather less evident with SDN, but things are changing. Why is that, do you think?
Also, I think NFV gives the platform that SDN needed for a long time. So SDN being a technology needed something that will give it the meaning that was required for a long time. So what SDN brings is the programmability of the functions and how these functions are chained together to deliver services that consumers and our enterprises will consume. So in that context, what NFV is giving is that vehicle of delivering services virtually and then allowing them to be changed using SDN technology. So what SDN has found in NFV is a great partner, which was lacking before because the things were built monolithically. They didn't have the necessary service abstractions. They didn't have the programmability. What NFV brings is that agility and programmability, and what SDN brings is that controller and data plane abstraction. So in some sense, this is a great marriage made in heaven, which now allows carriers to look at SDN as a pragmatic technology that they can deliver for the betterment of how networks are built.
We've seen that the ETSI NFG ISG has a finite shelf life. It was going to be 2 years, 3 years. It's been extended by a couple, but nonetheless, there is a destination, an endpoint at which it will cease to be relevant and something else will emerge to take its place. What about CEF? Is it on a journey? Does it have a destination, an endpoint, a terminus, or will it continue?
So we do have a journey. What we are trying to establish is an environment where carriers can actually see this thing. So the first thing that we are trying to do in the first half of next year is to establish an interoperability lab that is hosted by carriers, that is hosted by vendors, in which we will run large-scale workloads that will showcase how cloud services over carrier Ethernet can be delivered, how SDN can be used to deliver these services, how network functional virtualization technologies can be used on the edges of the network. And our intent is to become a showcase on how this technology can be used. We are not necessarily in this forum advocating a set of standards. What we are advocating is the use of this technology in moving it to the next stages. So from that point of view, we do see, next 6 to 9 months as critical. Now, once we have delivered on the lab, and we've delivered, if we find gaps in areas where we need to work with appropriate standards body, whether that be carrier Ethernet or ETSI or ONF, we will go about doing so. Then we'll look at what is next.
Right, right. Because one of the big emphasis here in Düsseldorf is on proof of concept. Right. In the event, there are, 14 or more proof of concepts running at the moment. You can see them working, and it is a collaboration between carriers, vendors, technologists, and so on. And it's very impressive to see it, how quickly they can bring these things together. Is the CEF a facilitator for proofs of concept?
Absolutely, in one way. I mean, what we have not done as a community in CEF is to form that sort of a proof of concept body. I mean, what ETSI has done brilliantly is formed this body which showcases the work. What we haven't done is that. But I think the intent is the same. I mean, if you look at our OpenCloud project, which is essentially taking the POC concept, but essentially doing it in the vendor and carriers lab. So in some way, form and shape, it is exactly the same thing. It's just not so public. And again, we are trying to figure out how we work in a collaborative way with both ETSI ISG and ONF to showcase the work that we're trying to do in the OpenCloud project.
One last question to you, Vinay, if I might. What about openness? A lot of NFV and SDN is predicated on the concept of openness to avoid manufacturer vendor lock-in for the carriers, tiers 1, 2, 3, whoever they may be. As far as the CEF is concerned, how important is openness?
It's very, very important. So, I mean, if you look at, openness comes from a variety of different ways. This could come from standards body defining very rigid and very well-defined standards, which then leads into interoperability specification, testing, and then the vendors build products that are built to those specs, which allows openness. So that's one way. Openness could be derived from open source projects, which become de facto standards within the industry, which is another way to get openness. And in the web properties, I mean, if you look at openness, they have achieved it using Web Services API, open APIs, using REST, and other programming models. What we are starting to see is the carriers also adopting similar models. I mean, in some cases, standards are necessary because hardware is involved and other things. In some cases, it could be open source projects which will lead to de facto standards. And in some cases, the CSPs and the vendors will come up with open APIs that will allow meshing up of these technologies without having to make major changes in downstream code bases. So I think openness can be looked at in a variety of different ways, not necessarily in just standards, as I said. So we are starting to see that. Now, what we are also seeing is vendors opening up their tools and technology because they see as imperative. They've been asked by the communication service providers and the community to open up their platforms, which allows them to work with other partners in the ecosystem. So we are starting to see openness in general becoming the theme. And I believe it will be for the betterment of the entire CSP world where vendors work with each other in open interfaces, open standards.
Interesting stuff. We'll see what happens over the coming 6 to 9 months, when I'm sure we'll be speaking again at some time or other, but it's good to see you. Vinay Saxena, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.